So tonight's talk and whatnot. There's a lot of different little things that I want to talk about. Man, yes, thank you. Yes, it is. Thank you. So I'll be talking for a little bit, and I know we're going to get a little antsy because we're on the floor and whatnot. Try to do the best you can. Try not to lay down, because the moment you lay down, you're like, I'm just laying down and listening. Yeah, I'm just laying down. And like, oh, that won't happen to me. It has happened. And so people are just all like, I'm just like resting in the spirit. Like, yeah, I'm not sure what spirit, but you're resting in some spirit. Tonight, if you have, I want you to feel free to write anything down that I'm going to say, especially some of this like beginning stuff, because it's going to be pretty important. And it's going to be really good for your spiritual life, because there's a lot of people that I talk to that don't know a lot of the stuff that I'm about to mention. So adoration is a time in which we can come one-on-one with God, right? In adoration, we see the piece of bread, but it's not piece of bread. It's Jesus. And it's this interesting, beautiful, metaphysical, spiritual reality in which what we see is no longer what we know that is there. Like there in the piece of bread, it is Jesus Christ. It is his body, blood, soul, and divinity. And people have different experiences in adoration, some powerful ones. What sometimes does happen is a bunch of healing. That does happen, and people begin to kind of encounter something. They encounter God's love. And they experience it in different ways. Now, this is kind of where I'm going with things here. Sometimes people say, well, Father, I don't feel anything. And then it's immediately like this idea that like, oh, well, maybe it's just not for me. Or maybe I'm broken. Or maybe God doesn't love me. That's why I don't feel anything. And so far these last 2 days or so, we've been talking about just like experiencing God, having these emotions. But I'm fairly certain that there are many people in here and that will say like, well, yeah, we're hyped up, but like, I don't feel God. So I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about consolation and desolation. Consolation and desolation. And these are two very important aspects of the spiritual life. Well, not important, but like they're principles, like things that kind of govern, like so we can understand what's going on in our spiritual life. So consolation would be the warm fuzzies of prayer. Consolation are those graces, they're gifts. Consolations are those moments when like people are experiencing something like, oh, I feel God, like I hear him talking to me, or like I feel a certain way, I'm seeing angels, or God like speaks to me, like I hear him saying certain things. Consolation are things that we hear a lot of people sometimes experience. Consolation, again, it's a gift. Consolations are gifts. They're good things. Desolation is different. Desolation is on the opposite side of the spectrum. Desolation are moments in which, when we pray, we feel alone. When we pray, it feels like we're talking to a brick wall. Consolation is the experience that we feel like we're in an empty room. Desolation is the moment like we feel like we're in an empty room. Desolation is just this, it almost feels like we're trying, we're like, God, I just love you, like I'm trying here. And it almost feels like God has like his arms crossed and he's like, you're not trying hard enough. Keep going. Nope, you're failing. So desolation hurts. We feel dry. We feel thirsty in desolation. Feels like no matter what we do or how much we pray, we just don't get it. Like it's never enough. Has anyone either experienced or heard of their friends experience desolation before? Show of hands. Desolation, just to let you know, desolation is spiritually normal. Desolation is spiritually normal. There is nothing wrong with you if you are undergoing desolation. It's part of the spiritual life to experience desolation. Sometimes people experience desolation for a little bit, and sometimes people experience it for a long time. And there are two reasons, or not just two, but I'll speak on two things. One of the reasons why people experience desolation is because of sin. Like sometimes we need to go to confession. It's our sin that is preventing us from experiencing God. Sometimes though, we may be going to confession and we still experience desolation. And again, desolation in that instance, those both instances, it's still spiritually normal. It makes sense if you're experiencing desolation if you're in sin. But it can also make sense that you're in desolation when you've been going to confession, when you've been going to mass, you're going to youth group, when you're in praise and worship, and you're just like there, you're just trying, and like you don't feel anything. That's spiritually normal. So imagine this. Carter, come here real quick. Just real quick. So Carter, just do me, wait, take a seat here. So imagine, scoot over just a little bit. Okay, thanks. So imagine moments of consolation. You're here and the Lord is with you. Moments of consolation, you're just looking around in your life and you're going through your life, school and whatnot. And moments of consolation is the Lord, He's there with you, but He has His hand on your shoulder. This is the warm fuzzies. These are the moments in which you experience something. This is like when you hear things, when people have these experiences. Desolation is the moment that the Lord just lifts His hand and He's just pulling it away from you. But notice, is the Lord still sitting right next to you? Yes. But all He's done, He's just lifted His hand off of you. All right, Carter, thanks. In that moment, the moment when He's lifting His hand off of you, there are a couple things that are happening in that moment of desolation. He's beginning to say, what's more important to you? Are the gifts, is the consolation, are the gifts what you want more important to you? Or am I important to you? In the moment of Him lifting His hand, in that moment of desolation, He's asking, what's more important to you? Do you love the gifts or do you love me? In the moment of Him lifting His hand, it's also kind of, you imagine like children, right? When babies begin to grow, and then eventually babies start getting a little heavy, a little too heavy to hold, and you're like, okay, you are really getting heavy. So then you're just like, okay, time to walk. And then they're like, okay, walk. No, I don't like it. And they're like, no, pick me up. And you're like, oh, no, you don't. Like, let's keep walking. Like, I'm tired. Notice in that moment, the baby, the toddler, like, wants to be carried. But we're trying to teach him to walk, trying to teach her to walk so she can grow. In that moment of desolation, it's also the Lord putting us down as like, you got to start walking. It's time to start walking. It's a moment of deciding, making the personal decision, to love, to spend time with Him, even if you don't feel like it. Which is kind of weird to say, like, well, even if I don't feel like it, well, that doesn't sound like a relationship. It just sounds like an obligation. Well, no, it's still a relationship, because notice, what is love? We have this romanticized Hollywood idea of love. It's like lovey-dovey, like, I love you. No, I love you. Here's a rose. Like, it's like, oh, gag me with a spoon. Like, no, thank you. And granted, no, but romance, like that yes, can be part of love, okay? It can be part of love. But let me tell you something. When he comes home from work and his boss has chewed him out, he's stressed out on whether or not like they can pay the bills, and they still have to feed the family. When her boss has done nothing but criticize the work that she's been doing, and she still has to worry about her kids, and yet her husband is dealing with the stuff, and he's coming home, and now she feels she needs to take care of him. In those moments, I can pretty much assure you, it's not like, hello, honey, how are you doing? Because you don't feel the love. You don't feel the warm fuzzies of love. But in that moment in which he comes home, when she receives him, he receives her, in that moment, he has to say, okay, honey, what do you need? Like, do you need help with anything? Notice, he's not focused on his emotions, he's now focused on her. What do you need? You need me to take out the trash? Okay, let's go take out the trash. Take care of the kids? Okay, let's go take care of the kids. Let's go do this, let's go do that. He lays down his life. He's not focused on himself. It's about doing the good thing for the other person. True love is doing the good thing for the other person. That's the root of love. That's the heart of it. Doing the good for the other, willing the good for the other. Because now when you look at the cross, is that filled with warm fuzzies? No. That's filled with agony. That's filled with losing your life with every breath. And that was sacrifice. And yet he did that to gain us, win for us, save us, and allow us to enter into heaven, to win us the promise of heaven. He did the good thing for us. You see that? Love. So, in moments of desolation, when he's pulling his hand away, he's beginning to ask us to love him, to spend time with him, even if we don't feel like it, because we're stressed out from school. We're stressed out what we're going to do after high school. After our senior, we're stressed out where we're going to go, how we're going to work. When we're stressed out, stuff happens, life happens. He gets it. But he's wanting us to spend time with him. And yet he still leaves it up to us. So in the moment of desolation, it's a time of maturing as well. It's a time of growing up to be men, to be women of God. So then what do you do in desolation? You remain faithful. Remain faithful to your routine. Remain faithful to, if your routine is going to youth group, right, and then just doing a few of your prayers at night, speaking to the Lord, remain faithful to that. Don't stop going to youth group. That's the worst thing you can do. Don't stop going to mass. Don't stop going to confession. That's the worst thing you can do. You know, honey, like, I'm just not feeling this right now, so I'm going to hang out with my best friend, my buddy, and we're just going to play N64, whatever. And whatever, And so, like, who talks like that? But if you think about it, if the guy or if the woman is just all like, I'm not feeling this, like, this isn't, like, I'm not feeling the love, so I'm just going to go hang out with somebody else until it comes back. What's that? And yet that's sometimes what we do when we encounter desolation, and we have to remain faithful in the moments of desolation. Remain faithful to your routine. In desolation, though, what you can also do, so many of us have experienced God, and so in desolation, you're also meant to remember those moments of consolation. Remember what he has done. Remember the way he has moved in your life, because that is real. It's not just a phase. He is actually moving in your life, in your friend's life. You can see him moving. And so moments of desolation is also moments of also coming back to those moments of like, what did he do? What did I remember? What did I experience? What were some of the songs that I really liked that were helping me? And then sometimes even revisiting some of those songs. Okay, but then how do we know if we're encountering God? Another really great principle in the spiritual life. This is a great spiritual principle in the spiritual life. Whatever comes from God comes with his peace. Repeat after me. Whatever comes from God comes with his peace. So if you experience peace, you begin to experience God. I've known people that, I went to this biblical conference with a group of teens, my first year as a priest, and then there was just one of the young ladies, just all like, Father, like while everyone was like raising hands, to the Lord, like everyone's like really into it, and I just kind of sat there and I just didn't feel anything. It's like I just sat. And she's like, is something wrong with me? And I'm like, wait, what do you mean you just sat there? Were you annoyed? No. And I'm like, okay, wait. You sitting there, did you feel okay? Like you felt calm? Like you didn't need to do, like you just felt okay and quiet? She's like, yeah. I'm like, would you say that you would call that peaceful? She's like, yeah, I felt really peaceful, like just calm, like I didn't need to do anything. And I'm like, okay, you were experiencing God. Whatever comes from God comes with his peace. And she was like, wait, what? And I'm all like, people experience God differently and their souls are moving differently. And so some people could have this intense movement of the Spirit and they feel this intense peace and they feel like expressing with their body. But some people have such an intense movement, all of a sudden they just can't. And they just want to just be there with God and just be quiet with him. And she's like, oh. Now, what do I mean by peace? So that peace is that quiet, that stillness where just everything feels right. Sometimes you encounter peace through creation. Have any of you ever looked at the stars, or you've maybe looked through the forest, or you're walking out in nature, maybe you're at the beach or whatever. Have any of you, in one of those scenarios, all of a sudden like you just kind of just stop? Let's just take the example of the stars. Or if you're looking at a painting, or something, you just kind of stop and you're like, oh. And then you're just like, yeah. Like, has anyone ever experienced something like that? Okay, yeah, right, okay. So, look at this, notice this. That moment where things kind of just suspend, and you're like looking at something beautiful like that, what is actually happening is that your soul is actually catching a glimpse of God in creation. Because God created everything, right? It's like his fingerprint is in all of creation. And so when we encounter certain aspects in creation that are beautiful, that just kind of take our breath away, in those moments, your soul is encountering God. And so sometimes if some of you are saying like, well, in prayer, like I don't ever experience peace. Like there's something happens to me. I don't experience God. And then I mentioned that aspect of creation. I'm like, your soul is actually experiencing God when you see creation, when you see nature. All of a sudden, that teen is like, wait, God is talking to me through creation? I'm like, yeah. Everyone's spirituality is different. And yet it's meant to draw us closer to the Lord. And so be aware of that, even that whoa, like that feeling, that experience, like that quietness, that everything just is still, like that is the Lord. That is his peace. Repeat after me. Whatever comes from God comes with his peace. So if you ever experience peace in any situation, you are experiencing God. Your soul is catching a glimpse of him. It's experiencing him. And so when you are in desolation, coming back to desolation, it is possible, and this is going to sound really weird, it is possible to undergo desolation and yet still have peace. Because I've experienced it personally. I've talked to others who've experienced it. Like you feel really dry. It feels like you're talking to a brick wall. And yet for whatever reason, you almost feel like I'm supposed to be here. Like God is like still with me. He's still walking with me. And it's a really weird experience, and I wouldn't believe it if I had not experienced it myself growing up as a teen, as a young adult. So, consolation, desolation. Repeat after me. Consolation, desolation. Be thankful in the moments of consolation. Thankful in the moments of consolation. Be faithful in the moments of desolation. Be faithful in the moments of desolation. And sometimes we might experience desolation you might experience it in 24 hours. You like go up and down. You might experience desolation for several days, weeks. There are people that experience desolation for months and even years. And I remember hearing this one story of this guy from Spain, and after he would pray, for 13 years after he would pray, he would write, there's one word that would come up a lot. And the one word that would come up a lot while he's writing for 13 years was the word nada. Nothing. And yet he was still faithful. He was still faithful. And so, if you ever experience desolation, first of all, I want you to understand that you are spiritually normal. There's nothing wrong with you. But it also means that the Lord is calling you out to step it up, to be faithful. He thinks you're good enough to begin undergoing it. And don't forget how he has been faithful. Don't forget the blessings he's bestowed upon you. And so in adoration then, adoration is going to be a time of entering into worship. And kind of what the Ambrosius brothers have been talking about, I don't know if you noticed it, but they talk a lot about the body and soul. That we are this body and soul. That's what we are. And sometimes what we express with our bodies can help our souls enter into more with the Lord. And sometimes our souls are trying to get our bodies to express more what it's going through. And so if you, during adoration, don't feel anything at all, it's perfectly fine. But sometimes I want you to realize, in the moment of nothingness, is it nothingness or is it more like peace where he just wants to be with you? The one example I give, so imagine an old couple, right? Old couple, they're out on the porch and like they've been married for, let's just say like 50 years, right? They've been married for 50 years. And there she is, she's knitting away and he's just like looking at the paper. And just imagine this. Imagine like then at one moment, the guy just kind of just stops. He looks over at her. And then she's knitting and she stops. And she looks over at him. And they just look at each other. And then she goes back to knitting. And then he goes back to reading his paper. But notice, in that moment, they told each other that they loved each other, and they didn't have to say anything. All they had to do is just look at each other without words. And so adoration, we'll be singing, but in adoration, there also will be times of silence. And in those silent moments, sometimes the Lord won't even have to say anything to you. All he wants to do is just to sit and just look at you. And all he wants is for you just to look at him back. Like an old married couple. And to enter into that. So, this is what we're preparing for tonight. In adoration, I want you to understand that in adoration, like we're going to be worshiping God, but everybody here has a guardian angel. Everyone here has a guardian angel, and your guardian angel will be worshiping alongside of you. So this room is currently already pretty packed. And for whatever reason, some people may have more than one guardian angel to help them out in their vocation, in their life, whatever it may be. So you can imagine this room is more packed because some of us may have more than one. So they're going to be adoring God. So realize that this guardian angel has been with you all your life, has been with you in the great times and the worst of times, and now wants to help you worship God. And they also want to teach us on how to get closer to God. Random question. You don't have to raise your hands. But who has a relationship with their guardian angel? There's a couple of people, just a few people. So do not be afraid to talk to your guardian angel. You have never been alone. They fell in love with you the moment you were conceived, and they cried tears of joy the moment you were born. Your guardian angel loves you and just wants you to get closer to God, to make it a heaven. So do not be afraid to ask them for help, especially drawing closer to God. You have never been alone. That is a lie from the devil. You have never been alone. That is a lie from the devil. You have never been alone. You have never been alone. And so, he humbles himself and he will come to us in the form of what looks like bread. But it is him. The signs of wonders of the early Christian church, all these miracles still happen. And sometimes the way it manifests itself, those miracles, is interior healing. Those healings sometimes are interior, sometimes of the mind, the heart, the emotions, the passions, and sometimes it's physical healing. So, be prepared, because our Lord is coming. He wants you. He wants your heart. And it's up to you on what happens. Real quick, if anyone begins to experience anything during adoration, and if they're moved to tears and whatnot, I want to encourage you to let that person have the time with the Lord. I know we want to go to them and hug them and whatnot. Let them be with the Lord. He knows what she needs. Let them have that moment. Now, if they're like crying and there's like boogers like going down, give them tissue, please. Give them tissue. Like, help them out. Don't let them like be embarrassed. Like, help them out, you know. Don't be like, oh, I can't touch you. No, I'm sorry. Jesus, give her the tissue. Jesus, give her the tissue. I don't. Father said so. Father said so. Or like, well, where's your guardian angel now? Is your guardian angel going to help you? So, enter into this time. Enter into this moment. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to need to step away real quick and bring about Jesus. And so, Nick, or would you all be able to provide a little ambiance, preparing them, please? And so, if you have your pads of paper and whatnot, you can go ahead and just kind of store that. So again, I just want to encourage you to not lay down. Try not to lean on each other. I know. Shh. Come on, you guys. Let's prepare our hearts.